Could you say more about case appraisal? What's case appraisal?
Case appraisal is a process where, I guess to my mind, parties engage in a process to get a recommendation of what their BATNA might be. Now, let me explain that in a little bit more detail. First of all, BATNA is a term that some viewers may be familiar with. It stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. So in a case appraisal, your third party is typically a lawyer. And in some jurisdictions where it's regulated by legislation, for example in Australia, the third party does have to be a lawyer. And this makes sense because of the case appraiser's job. The case appraiser's job is to listen to mini submissions by the parties, so formal legal submissions, and then to make a recommendation, sometimes referred to as a preliminary judgment, but a recommendation about what the case appraiser thinks a likely outcome would be if the matter goes to court. Right. So that's why you want a lawyer, somebody who's familiar with that field and familiar with those courts. And if the parties, get that type of feedback from a case appraiser, they can then use that as a basis for their negotiations, right? That's the alternative. If they can't agree, well, this is going to be a likely outcome if we go to court. The interesting thing on top of that is that in some jurisdictions, the legislation says that if parties don't reach negotiated settlement within 30 days, and if they don't do anything else, then this preliminary judgment or this piece of advice by the case appraiser becomes a default judgment of the court to which the matter was going, right? So basically they've got 30 days to try and sort out a different agreement, right? Yeah. Or the case appraiser's decision becomes binding on them. Right. Now, they can challenge the case. If they still want to go to court, they can. They can challenge the case appraiser's decision. But typically, if they do that and then they go to court and the judge does not give a more favourable decision to the challenger, right, than the case appraiser did, then the challenger has to pay for, even if the challenger still wins the case, challenger has to pay for process costs from the case appraisal to court.
Interesting.
Right? So there's a lot of, there's quite a bit of, it's not an uncontroversial process in that sense because there's quite a lot of pressure on parties to sort it out outside of court and not get to court. And if you choose to go to court, you're taking quite a risk. So sometimes the lawyers are playing a game of who's going to challenge. Let's wait until the day 29 because it's the challenger who takes the risk and not the other party. That makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of sense. Good.